Hey everybody, it's Mark Pattison. I'm back again with another great episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. Before we get on to my wonderful guest today, again, I want to promote my book, Finding Your Summit. Michael, you'll like this, How to Build Resilience and Faith to Rise Above Life's Challenges. So I've had a lot of peaks, and I've had a lot of valleys, and it's really
Mhm.
about how you climb out of those things and the mental toughness, mindset, resilience. There's a whole bunch of things that we're going to get into today, of how you do that. And I've got a number of different strategies on how I've applied that to my life to
Hmm.
reach some of these different things around the world, like climbing the seven summits and being in the NFL and things like that. Also, if you want me to come in and speak to your organization, go up to my website, www.markpattisonnfl.com, and message me there and I will come in and I will light up your organization and it will be super fun. So on that note, talking about lighting up our conversation today, I want to welcome to the show Michael Allison. Michael, how are you doing?
Doing great. Looking forward to where we go, how this plays out, and you lighten me up. So let's go. Let's go.
You know what? I don't even know where this is going exactly, but we were introduced. I just want to set this up for the listeners. So
Hmm.
you're in Santa Barbara. I'm in
Hmm.
Sun Valley, Idaho, and we were set up by somebody I met in Montenegro, where I was there speaking recently. And we both have the great privilege. And I got to tell you, I was pretty intimidated going into it. And I don't get intimidated by much, because we both got to speak to Harvard. So I
Hmm.
just thought they were going to be so intellectually far over my head. And what I found, which was really interesting, and we're going to talk about a little background here. I'm not, I don't want to just put you as only a performance coach. You're a leadership coach. You're a lot of things. But in context of the Harvard talk that I did and that you did, I never got to my slides. And one of the reasons why we never got to the slides is because I cut in on one of their other conversations of which they asked me to comment on. And so the common thread and the common line with this, and I want to hear your experience
Hmm.
too, which was there's all these situations that come up. And at the end of the day, no matter how smart you are, where they were maybe given a super talent on being able to take tests and consume information
Hmm.
really quickly and things like that, where I was maybe not as much on that end, but more athletically gifted the most, right? So we all have these different gifts.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, the commonality of all this is we all have feelings and insecurities and strengths and weaknesses. And what did Johnny say about that? And how we go through life. And that's what they were more concerned about because we all put our pants on the same way. What was your
Hmm.
experience there?
Very much the same, right? So we just had a conversation, and the prior year I'd come in and done a presentation, and same kind of thing. I started, and then it turned into just this wonderful conversation because what you're saying is what I'm seeing too is the human beneath all of it is the same, right? And so they're responding to a tremendous amount of pressure, whether it's in the business world, whether it's in just that academic environment. And so we talked a lot about how do you respond to that pressure? How do you recognize it? And what do you do? Like, do you just grind through it or do you find ways to relate to it differently? And we talked a lot about Michael Phelps. So I was asked to
Yeah.
really look at a Michael Phelps case study that Harvard did. And so we talked all about that, but really related it to their own lives because they're all high performers, high achievers.
They sure are. Okay, so let's go back and talk about, let's just stay on that thread for a minute.
Hmm.
So I think one of the things you just said was how you respond in a certain
Hmm.
way, right?
Hmm.
So let's talk about, you're also, by the way, I want to get this out. You're the author of the Performance Code. And I
Hmm.
think if we all had that secret and that magic code, um, we'd all be better off in so many different ways, jealousies and insecurities and things in the workplace. And for me, I was a former NFL player. And so the so much of what, when you start talking about that word performance, I can tell you with complete sincerity, honesty, and there's no humility in this because it was what it was. There were so many players that were better than me. They really were. They're just athletically more gifted. They could run faster, jump higher, catch all
Hmm.
these things, but it was what was going on between the years. And that's
Hmm.
where there seemed to be a slight separation of,
Hmm.
and you see this in so many people. And then when you put it all together and have a guy like Michael Phelps, who not only is physically built like a 747 and ready to
Hmm.
paddle in the water, but he's also got this strong mindset, although he went through a lot of challenges himself. So let's go back
Yeah.
into like
Yeah.
touch on that for a minute because that's really interesting to me. And just like like how does somebody optimize themselves in a way that they can be at their peak performance?
So to me, the first part is recognizing how the body, not just the mind, but how the body is responding to the pressure, right? And so are you, as you're moving into a pressure-packed experience, are you feeling your heart rate rise? Are you feeling like muscle tightening? Are you feeling a shift and change in your posture or how you're orienting? Even the sounds you're hearing, right? And so the first part for me is awareness of how the body, how the physiology, not just how the mind, but how the physiology is responding. And the mind plays a big role in that. And it's also coming out of how the physiology is responding. So that's where I start is awareness of just how are you responding to this? And accept it, acknowledge it, respect it. Don't try to change it. Don't try to shove it down. Don't try to stop it from happening. Just first honor how is my physiology being organized in relationship to this experience. And to me, that's not only Michael Phelps stepping up to the block and jumping into the pool. That's all of us. That's every interaction. That's us right now with you and me. We haven't met before.
Hmm.
We have a shared friendship with someone that we both trust, but our bodies are responding to this in different ways because we don't. It's unfamiliar. It's unpredictable. We both want a really cool outcome, right? So it's important to us. All of those factors play a role in how my heart is beating, how my breathing patterns are forming, my posture, my orientation, my sound of my voice, all of those things. And so that's where I start is let's just recognize how things are shifting, changing, and now how do we then relate to that in ways that might be helpful? And in these high performance settings, what I've observed is a lot of people just take that, what we call nervous energy, and they channel it, and I call it fight. They channel it toward attacking and just going after it, locking in on the opponent or locking in on what they want to do, what do they want to execute. And that can work, and that can take us pretty high. It's certainly more performance oriented than retreating, right? Or just playing defense and playing it safe. So I have this hierarchy and I say like fight, it's pretty high performing, but we have to recognize there's limits. There's advantages to it and there's limits. And we can harness it, right? We can harness this intensity. We can really, really focus. We can put the game face on and just lock in. But we have to recognize that's also metabolically costly. We're missing opportunities for creativity. We might even miss opportunities for just a little different way to see how to solve this problem, right? A change in strategy, a pivot, something like that. So I tried it. That's where I go. It's just recognize what's happening. How might you use what your physiology is providing? And also, how might you guide it toward what might better match the situation or the context?
Interesting. I want to relate my own experience really quickly just to ask a question out of that.
Hmm.
So I relate to what you're saying in a lot of different ways because when I was playing football, and especially as I got elevated, this is beyond high school, but now
Hmm.
like when I was hardcore playing in college and we're playing the top teams around the country in Oklahoma and USC, UCLA, Stanford, all those,
Mm.
and then especially in the NFL. Like that is a warrior. I mean, people came out and there were battles. I'm talking about full on fist fights, hardcore, and you had to be a gladiator. And so I think what your point was about that worked for me up until about 30, right? And now I get out of the NFL. I really was kicked out, but I got out. And and now I'm going into like real life, and what worked for me there is being the gladiator. So I had to go through this huge transformation because what served me here didn't serve me there,
Mm.
and I didn't even really recognize it. It took me years and years and years to really figure that out, and so it's just I'm sure that you work with certain people where maybe they've had something similar, maybe not
Hmm.
exactly, but they do have to go for that, like you said, or your words, your
Hmm.
transformation. And but recognizing that and really understanding like and embracing, it's almost like I had to become way more vulnerable in order to open up to possibilities for the future and other things that and gifts that could come.
I love that reflection. And I would say not everyone has that level of awareness and recognizes it. And part of that is the awareness, but you also, for whatever reason, and maybe you had wonderful relationships in your life that were helpful. Maybe you had already some resources that were allowing you. But part of what I'm getting at is we can be locked in a physiology that only trusts that it's actually safe to fight. Like that, being that gladiator, as you described, that might be the only resource or the only way of moving through the world that someone trusts. And that might not be conscious,
Hmm.
right? And so for whatever reason, you, in my language, you had a level of awareness. You recognized it wasn't working like the way that you would hope it would work outside of the NFL. But you also had, for whatever reason, you had some resources that were allowed your physiology to shift and move out of that fight, right? Like, so when you're describing a gladiator, and there's a really good, if anyone's watched The Quarterback on NFL on the
Yeah, I'm watching it right
Netflix,
now.
right?
Yeah.
It's great, right? And you
Yeah.
can see if you compare these quarterbacks
Yeah.
from a physiological perspective, what kind of muscle tension do they have? What's their facial expressions like? How are they communicating with the other players? How are they communicating even with the the lineman coming at them, right? Like you can see who's actually kind of relaxed and playing and who's actually in more of a state of fight, right? And again, a state of fight might be what someone needs because everybody else around them is also fighting. And it's really hard to be in a state of play when everything is gladiator oriented. Okay. But I would say Patrick Mahomes is in a state of play. When I
He
watch
looks
those
at it.
episodes from a
Yeah.
year ago, he's actually communicating with the people trying to tackle him, and he's joking with them. He's relaxed. I would say in this newer series, the guy from the Washington, he was
Hmm.
much more too in a state of play. And then you look at Flacco.
Yeah.
Flacco to me is almost detached. There's like a numbness to him. He doesn't get up and down. So there's almost this adaptive physiological response where he's almost a little bit detached and it works for him, but does that also now carry over to his family life?
Hmm.
Right? And you might say, well, kind of because he was talking about how he just loves being alone in the bar eating food, right? While his family. So those are the things that you, for whatever reason, really recognize that, hey, the physiology I was in that allowed me to be a successful NFL player isn't necessarily the physiology that's allowing me to have a really rich life after NFL. And
Yeah.
I would say that that is incredible and not everyone figures that out. And that's partly why people can't retire, right?
Yeah.
Either is
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just never enough. I've
Yeah.
never done enough. I've never done enough. Well, what is that? That's partly psychological, partly a
Yeah.
habit,
Yeah.
but there's a big physiological component to that.
Yeah. I'd say I'm still a little bit in that zone too, right? Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, I've gone
Hmm.
on and, been running Sports Illustrated the last 10 years and things like that. And so there's just, I just so enjoy not necessarily the accomplishment, but the goal to try to get
Hmm.
there. And
But
that's what's
would you say that has shifted for you and maybe early in your career that was coming more from a sense of proving something or needing to get something? And would you say it's shifted into now more aspiration and inspiration and more about the just curiosity, the exploration?
Yeah, you could probably there's if you take a pie, you could probably slice that pie, and there's a slice of each one of those things that you just said. I'm trying to prove it to myself, maybe to others,
Hmm.
as well as I love the process. I love chasing after a
Hmm.
goal. I love putting it way
Hmm.
down there, and then the day-to-day
Hmm.
grind of
Hmm.
of going after that. So I mean, to be fair too, and I don't want to make this podcast about me. But I just think this is so applicable in so many everybody
Hmm.
else's situations that if like coming out of the NFL, I mean, part of the reason why there was this fight or flight thing of where I knew and I realized I had to change is because that didn't work for me anymore. And I mean, I was just like, I had no skills, I had nowhere to go but up.
Hmm.
And I had to
Hmm.
learn how to live in a
Hmm.
civilian world, so to
Hmm.
speak, right? Because you
Hmm.
can't fight in a workplace and you got to be, and like you said, that creativity that comes too. So it was more something that it was either sink or swim. So you either get with the
Hmm.
new way of
Hmm.
living or
Hmm.
because that wasn't going to work for you going
Did
forward.
you have a trusted friend or support? Did you have someone that you were with in that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this was now my ex-wife, but
Hmm.
and she was there, but I think there was a lot of frustrating, moments because that was early
Hmm.
on in the marriage and for a lot of athletes, like you said, coming out of it, it's a drug too. You've been doing it for so
Oh,
long.
totally.
And
Yeah.
just trying to like, okay, now how do you rechannel that and get that from someplace else? And again, if you push that out and you look at a lot of athletes, you're like, is Michael Phelps? I know he's not, but going to come back for another Olympics coming up? No, but there's the gymnasts,
Hmm.
I can't remember, the famous gymnast.
Yeah, Simone Biles.
Simone Biles,
Hmm.
she's
Yeah.
reconsidering coming, sort
Hmm.
of, I'm not sure she's in
Hmm.
retirement or not, but she's the main attraction once she jumps in and all the sponsors and all the attention and all the TV stuff, she's the
Hmm.
person. So to
Hmm.
tell you, like, put that down and go, I'm just going to hang out at home for a high
Hmm.
achiever like that
Hmm.
it's hard
Hmm.
to do, right?
Yeah, and it's your whole it's your people too, right? Like so in your case too, like and Michael Phelps,
Yeah.
his whole his peer group was all oriented around swimming, right? His coach was his closest relationship outside of his what became his wife and all of that too.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it as well. And I would never suggest that we have to put aside that mobilized energy that in your NFL world was really more fight or flight based, more gladiator, but we can harness that and we can combine it with really important work, that aligns with what's really important to us or what difference we want to make. We can align it with doing it with people that we really like being around, that lift us, that in physiologically allow us to come into a rhythm so it's not just locked in, tense, but it's moving. It's
Hmm.
sometimes playful, sometimes intense. It's not just rigid and locked in, right? And so we can take that and we can redirect it and we can reshape it. So it's not a physiology that I would say is grounded in this, I've got to just prove or I've got to make something happen. And it can become more of like, yeah, I really want this, of course, but I want to see what happens. I want to play with it. And that's a different philosophy, but it's also a different physiology that takes time to kind of cultivate, especially for really high performing, high achievers who have spent a lifetime locked more in that intense
Yeah.
physiology that it's all about conquering and dominating.
So you live up in uh Santa Barbara, as we talked about, and I wrote this
Hmm.
down. So you live in between, or when you're helping people, in between your potential and your performance under
Performance.
pressure for the physiological state. So tell me,
Hmm.
when people come to you, are these mainly athletes, or tell me who, when you're helping them out and you're coaching them, you're advising them, you're whatever that word is, you're trying to get these people in this play zone. I want to talk about that. But tell me that, like, the profile of people that
The
are coming.
profile is it's somebody who is struggling with something. Typically, they're coming to me because they're really struggling. Often it's athletes. So like I just met with someone who is a Division 1 track athlete,
Hmm.
okay, who has gradually gotten to a place where now, as they're running and even finishing, their bowels are releasing and they're even approaching passing out. And sometimes they pass out and yet they still win. Right. Okay. But so what's going on? And so they've
Yeah.
been through all these medical tests. Well, what's going on is for many reasons, their body is reaching a point of overwhelm. Part of it's how they're pushing themselves, part of it's how they're breathing and intentionally breathing, and part of it's the pressure they're feeling now competing at this level, right? So as the pressure keeps building, as we keep accumulating more and more in this particular person, in their body, and they're still very successful, they're recognizing that this is not sustainable. I can't keep doing this. And what's really going on? So that's sometimes how it is, or someone will reach out because, hey, this, what I like a baseball player, I used to really care about hitting and I'd feel a little nervousness when I'd step into the box. I don't feel anything anymore. I don't know what's going on. I'm not seeing the ball like I used to. I'm not even, but I don't even care. It's like, what's that? Right. And they're a professional baseball player. Okay. So
Hmm.
again, that's a physiological response. That's actually a body similar to this other athlete where they're starting to feel overwhelmed and the body's conserving. It's numbing. It's actually detaching from that. So usually someone is coming to me because something's not working, right? Or something that used to work is no longer working. Or they've reached a plateau, and they just aren't getting to where they hope they could get to. So, and it's mostly athletes, but not always. I mean,
Hmm.
it's general population. I came at all of this from owning a fitness facility for 25 years, which
I was just going to ask you this, like how, because of the way that you're articulating kind of the existing, problem solution, of these
mhm.
people and why people are coming to you, that's was going to be my question. Like, where did this start? Like, where did you first like see this opportunity and you wanted to do something about it?
So I opened up a fitness and performance center in Santa Barbara in Montecito
Hmm.
in 1999. And the goal there was really to help people transition from physical therapy and rehab because I had worked with a physical therapist. And so I saw this real need between taking people who were struggling with injuries and getting back to real life and real function. Okay. And so that was really about retraining movement patterns and an awareness of how the body's movement and all of that. And that sort of morphed into, oh, well, there's other habits in their life. There's other things that are going on that are also really getting in the way of what they want, what they want their life to be like. And so I really dove deeply into habit science and behavior science and how do you change habits. And that led me into looking into the nervous system and recognizing, well, wait a second, most of these habits and patterns of the ways we behave or the choices we make are actually rooted in something a little bit deeper. And they're actually responses and ways that we tried to help ourselves feel differently, right? And what is feeling? Feeling is what's going on in the physiology becoming conscious is one way to look at what a feeling is. So what I started doing is recognizing, wait a second, behavior science can work up to a point, but some of these really deep habits and patterns in behavior or the way someone is really responding under pressure, it's deeper than just intention.
Hmm.
It's happening in the physiology. So then I started studying the nervous system, started studying all of that body of work, some biology, some neurophysiology, and just that's where this led. And I had the opportunity to be working with professional athletes or high level athletes, starting with movement and nutrition and all of that. And I just started integrating more and more of this kind of stuff
Yeah.
into where now this is the foundation.
Yeah.
So the movement and all of that, again, can be an input. It can also be a reflection of what state someone is occupying. So they go together, the breath, what they're eating, how they're sleeping. But I go more directly to the physiology and how do we send signals? How do we get inputs into these more primitive systems that start supporting the person moving into the state that is best suited for the situation? And how do they actually build what I call agility so they can move? They're
Yeah.
not just locked in like you were as a gladiator. You can get into a gladiator, but you can also recover and actually let down the guard and So that's
Well,
how it all kind of
yeah,
kind of
no, I
went.
no, I love it, and I will admit to you that I'm a recovering gladiator way back then. All right, so the play zone. Tell me more about that. There's 750 plus coaches, 35 countries, 25 different professions, is I think what you meant to say there. What is the play zone?
So the play zone is actually it's a physiological state where you have more of that mobilized energy. Your heart rate's going up, your breathing might be elevating, you have a little more movement through the body, you're prepared, but it's also in rhythm. There's connection, there's social connection. So like you're with a teammate and you're not just a gladiator fighting, you're actually communicating in ways where you're getting team chemistry, right? And so functionally, it's a physiological state that has still heart rate rhythms. It has breathing rhythms. It's not just continuing to elevate like a runaway train. There's actually fluidity. So that's functionally what it is. And about 5 years ago, I created a course that was about how do you meet the body where it is and how do you start guiding, especially as the pressure rises, how do you start guiding your physiology there intentionally and skillfully into what I called the play zone. That
Yeah.
was just a phrase I made up that encompasses what people call the flow state. But the flow state to me it's too narrow. The conditions from which flow can emerge are pretty precise. Play zone is a little bit broader, right? So we can do things with our breath, with our attention, with how we're orienting, with who we're doing things with to get into the play zone easier than we might be able to get into the flow state. But the flow state is part of my play zone.
Yeah.
So I started teaching these courses and I've been doing it for 5 years. And then it was translated into French and German and Polish. And I do it in different languages. And we have this really cool community. It's mostly, I mean, there's psychologists, there's therapists, there's coaches. It's very diverse. And that's what I do.
I love that. I love that. My last comment with all this is we kind of start, you and I started offline talking about you live in Santa Barbara, you're near the ocean, you're by palm trees. I'm in the mountains of Sun Valley. There's only 4,500 people here, so a very small ski resort, ski destination. The flowers are out. I've
Mhm.
ran into 15 rabbits, hopping down it's just very tranquil. It's really amazing what nature can do to really calm your mind down,
Mhm.
calm your body down when you
Mhm.
really, and you see that all the time with people in recovery and they go to yoga retreats, in Guatemala or someplace. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
anyways, it's just it's very interesting. Where can people find you? Because you do go out and you do public speak, and again, you have this book.
Yeah. Yeah. So either theplayzone.com, which is my website that talks about these courses and things, or for the book that will be coming out that you mentioned, theperformancecode.com.
Yeah.
Or just on LinkedIn, Google me. I write a pretty regular column for Psychology Today called The Pressure Paradox, where I write a lot about these things and I use sport as the metaphor. So I that those are the key places, LinkedIn, Psychology Today, or those two websites. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity. And thanks for being honest about your own experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's
Well,
terrific.
yeah, well, it's real and it's what happened. And I think, the
Mm-hmm.
more that people share, I mean, I think that's one of the great problems today is that people don't share enough,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all it does, it benefits me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
it may
Mm-hmm.
benefit somebody else, but I'm trying to get to a more optimal state of just being myself and
Mm-hmm.
get rid of all those things. And going back to the Harvard thing, that's what you saw from many of those different kids that were there. This was I think it was a Harvard MBA, so a little bit
Mm-hmm.
older, but
Mm-hmm.
still, we all put the pants on the same way, and we both experience life, in a similar way, but a different way, which
And
transforms to this stuff.
and what are we all really after, right? I think we're all after what the biology is seeking is a sense of connection, right? The freedom, like you were talking about, to
Yeah.
just be vulnerable. And it doesn't feel like vulnerability. It actually
Yeah.
feels like freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll run this in a couple weeks and then we'll get this out there and blow it up. So, again, have a great day, have a great week, have a great month. And
Yeah. Great
let's,
to meet you.
yeah, and it's really great to meet you and continue to do what you do because you're making a difference in the world.
Thanks. You too.
All right,
All
there
right.
he is, the one, the only Michael Allison. Thank you.